and I wound up making varsity. And then I was on probably one of the worst teams in the city of Philadelphia for high school basketball at that point. And I just was playing. I was able to just play and get the feel for being in the game, being with referees. 10th grade year was the same thing. I played again. And in Philadelphia, we had the Sunny, it was at that point in time, the John Chaney Sunny Hill basketball summer league. Sunny Hill was probably one of the most instrumental people in the lives of every basketball player that came out of Philadelphia. His league was, if you didn't play in his league in the summertime, you wasn't nobody. I was down there playing basketball against probably about 4 or 5 of the guys that played in the same high school team, which was going to be the #1 ranked team in the country. And I held my own. Like, I literally held my own against them guys. And literally after the game, one of the guards came up, Sean Red Smith, came to me and said, "Yo, what school do you go to?" he was like really amazed, like, "What school do you go to?" Because he never seen me, because the division I was in was nowhere near the division that he played in. Philly is huge.
Right.
And he says to me, like, "Look, what are you doing there? Where do you live?" Because during that time, you had to go to the school that was in
closer to your neighborhood.
Your neighborhood school.
Yeah.
And just so happened, Simon Gratz, was eventually the school I went to, was down the street from where I lived.
Mm-hmm.
My mom had sent me out of the community. You know, there was an initiative that get on the school bus, go and integrate these schools outside of the community and get a feel for, you know, the rest of the city.
Right.
And so Reyes was persistent. He came to my brother's older at the time, he played in high school, and he was like, "Look, we need to really consider leaving there and coming with us." And honestly, the only reason why I did was because I had to get on the bus early in the morning. I wasn't being successful in the classroom. And I just went to my mom and said, "Mom, look, you know I'm not doing well at school. This school is 5 minutes away. I can get there." She said, "Well, you just got to promise me that you do well." So, you know, I wound up talking to Sean Reyes again, and he was like, "You know, we're going to be #1 team in the country." And I was like, "What?" He was like, "We got the #1 player in the country on our team." He didn't tell me this before, and I'm like, "You sure I want to go there?" That #1 player was Rasheed Wallace.
So stop. Before you go there, and I want to make sure I stop here. What is the feeling knowing that you're going on the team with the #1 player in the country, knowing full well, like, it was recreation before, but it's low-key a business now? What are you thinking now when you hear that?
I was almost ready to back out, because I'm like, #1 team in the country, not just the city, not the state, country, with the #1 player in the country on it. And you want me to come here? And this was prior to the coach seeing me. Coach didn't see me play. Nobody seen me play. He just knew that I could play basketball. And so I went back to my mom. My mom was like, "Well, you can't. You made a decision, and you promised me that you was going to do better in school." So she made me stick with that decision. And so, you know, I wound up deciding to go. And it was easy. It was an easy transition because it was my neighborhood school. So there was no questions about who was this kid coming. And nobody knew about me at that point in time. So me going into that school, Simon Gratz, was like, okay, this Lynard going to a school in his neighborhood school. And so, you know, when I first got there, I was kind of trying to like hide. And eventually one day I seen Rasheed Wallace, and it was like a business meeting. You know what I mean? Like, he kind of knew that I was going to be coming and or whatever else like that. And he was the #1 player in the country. Obviously, he was 6'11", and he came up to me and said, "Hey, you know, Rasheed, you know, I went to the school and all that other stuff. You know, I look forward, you know, to you know, starting practice and whenever we start practice." But I didn't know what he meant, but I knew later on what he meant. And so going there, I was my 11th grade year. Rasheed was a senior, and that's what we was. We was the #1 team in the country. And honestly, I owe my life, not my life, you know, literally, but I owe my basketball career, my success, my family, friends that I acquired all over the globe to those 2 people. Not just those 2 people, but for Sean Red Smith, who was the point guard at the time, for finding me and identifying me, and then Rasheed, because literally for the first month of practice, I got my shot blocked every day. And
so let me ask you this. So you come into that environment.
Mm-hmm.
What transitions do you have to make immediately? Because you can make mistakes on your old team, or you can make mistakes when you, but understanding what level does it take you to now? Because now you can't make those same mistakes, or it's punch buggy. Like, he's blocking everything, or you get no shots, or you get no minutes. What's the transition like for you in that space?
And that's a good question. Well, I learned very, very, very early that this was business, and this situation here changes lives at the school. And from the beginning, day one, school starts in September. Basketball season in Philadelphia doesn't start until end of November, December. We was running cross country, and that right there let me know that this is business. And we didn't just run cross country. All right, we're running to get chicken. We're running in real meets against real track people. We're going out. I mean, it's all of us, the whole entire team. We're running courses. We're running 10 miles. We're running, and that let me know, like, this is a little bit different from us just showing up to practice and, at the other school. And so that right there said, oh, you know what? I got to push myself. And lucky for me, I'm long, I'm lanky. I was able to just keep up and get conditioned fast. But like you said, when it came to practice, though, it was like, I knew I had skill, and, it was identified right away, like, he got some skill, because I didn't come from, like, my older brothers. One of my older brothers played in the NBA, and the other one, they both played collegiately in Division I. So learning from them, those skills that they taught me transition. So it wasn't like, oh, he's a kid that's just long. No, it was like, oh, he really can play. It just was the fact that I didn't have discipline and structure that Simon McGrath gave me and Coach Ellaby gave. And like I said, it was business with Rashid. He was number one. Rashid Wallace could have went to the NBA out of high school, hands down. So him being the number one player, he took it upon himself to let you know this is what the number one in the player in the country is. And I learned that immediately while we was practicing, how he carried himself, the things that he did. And it just made me, and I was like a sponge anyway, so I just excelled. Like, I started learning, like, oh, I can't, you gotta get this shot up over him a different kind of way. You gotta make this, you just can't go up. And so he taught me so much. And then that team, being the number one team in the country, we traveled the country. And every coach in America, it was different back then. We didn't have AAU as huge. So every coach in America was at our games. You see, they wanted Rashid. And our coach, William Ellaby, was smart. He said, look, Rashid his blueprint, his table is already set. You know what I mean? I'm going to use him to get you guys identified and who you guys are. And that's what he did a good job of. Like, Rashid would be on the court, but then Rashid didn't play the whole game. So coaches had to watch, oh, who is this team? Who is that guard? Who is this guy coming off the bench? And it helped us so much. And honestly, from that year, that's my 11th grade year, Rashid Wallace was the ranked, was awarded Player of the Year, obviously, hands down in the state, in the city. The following year, we still was ranked. We lost Rashid, whatever. We still was ranked in the country. I think I only lost 2 high school games at that school. One at the buzzer, one another against Felipe Lopez. But playing that year, my 11th grade year to my 12th grade year, I became so good. I actually won the Player of the City and the Player of the State that following year after Rashid left.
So talk me through it. Now you get the blueprint of what success looks like. Mm-hmm. Now you sponge it in, and now you regurgitate it, and now you become that player. Talk us through it now. Now it's time to take it to the next level. Now you've got college coaches, you've got colleges coming at us. How do you now get to Temple? Because let's face it, if you're the best player in the city, you're the best player, and now you've got notoriety and you guys are still ranked, there's a lot of options. What makes you choose Temple?
Right, good question. There was a lot of options, as you said. Like, I remember I used to get, back then it was letters in the mail store. I had trash bags full of letters from everywhere. From Wake Forest, Georgia Tech, all the local schools, Temple, St. Joe's, LaSalle, UConn. Majority of the schools that you can name. Because my senior year, I was ranked actually, I don't know, it was 45th or 48th top senior in the country. That was my senior year. And I was the 48th, 49th senior in the country. So I was a high recruit. And Temple, it was between 2 schools, honestly. I wanted to stay home because I loved the support that I got from my mom, my dad, my family, my friends. So I did want to stay home. My brothers both went, like I mentioned them before, they both went to the same school, HBCU, Coppin State. And I was down there all the time. It was between them and Temple. And just ironically, I don't know how to really explain this, but My brother was in the NBA at the time, and he had got robbed. A home invasion happened to him, and they came into his home, tied him up, stabbed him, shot him in the back of his head. He survived, and that was the time period where I was making my decision on what school that I was going to. And he was robbed and shot in the area of the school that he went to college that he went to. And so my mom came to me and said, I'm just worried. I don't want you down there. You know what I mean? That's what she came to me and said. And that kind of leaned me a little bit more towards Temple. Temple was on my table because the year before, as I'm being recruited, they had Aaron McKee, Eddie Jones, and they was on TV. They was playing UMass against Calipari, and they was playing Wake Forest, and they was playing everybody. And I'm saying to myself, well, why should I leave when I can go to the school and still play everybody and be home? You know? And so it was just an easy choice once that happened to my brother and my mom. So, and John Chaney obviously is in the Basketball Naismith Hall of Fame, so he's a Hall of Fame coach. So, I mean, and the next thing, I wasn't sure that I would be able to be coached by a non-African American coach because that's all I ever dealt with in my life. Not saying I have great coaches that are not African American, but I wasn't sure I was able to, you know what I mean? So that kind of was another reason factor, like, okay, I want to play for a black coach.
So talk me through it. You get there, you're in Coach Chaney. Coach Chaney's very animated, and he don't look like he's that type of dude that takes a lot of slack off. But that shouldn't affect you because you've come from a good program. How do you now manufacture your career there? How do you set yourself apart? Because like you said, there were good players there. Like Temple was stacked.
It was stacked. Same thing. It was a different transition, but the experiences that I had helped me a whole lot with being on the number one team in the country. So, ironically, I can honestly say that I was in more shape in high school than when I went to college. Like, our condition in high school was more in high school than it was in college. Obviously, you know, you got the bigger program and all those other amenities that come with college. But the business part, you know, Coach Chaney was you know, his motto was winning as an attitude, which also just goes into success that we were sitting here talking about. But how you carry yourself every day, not just when it's time for basketball, not just when it's time for every day, every moment of your life. How do you carry yourself? What are you thinking about? What are the things you're doing? How do people perceive you? And so that's he was more mental. That's what he was there. It was a mental thing. We would be in practice for rules were different, 3, 4, 5 hours. And it was mental. Like physically you wasn't tired. It was like, yo, can I still listen to what he's saying? You know what I mean? It was that. Can you still pay attention? Can you sit there and take and absorb what he's trying to get you to do and how you try to play? So
let me ask you something.
That was the transition.
Let me ask you something. How hard is that? Like a lot of people don't understand the fact that your body can take a lot more than your mind will allow if you're not engaged. Like, how does that help you? How did that help you in that point in time? And even, you know, we'll talk about your career later as a pro.
Yeah.
How does that help you, especially in games? Does it help you, or does it make you more irritable and short-minded with a lot of situations?
It helped me. It helps you as a player, as a person, as a role model, as a coach, as a mentor, to be able to have a mental strength. You know, I always say your mind is a muscle also. It's like as you work your heart, you work your legs, you work your physical attributes, your mind is a muscle, your brain is a muscle. And that's what we had to adjust to. And so it wasn't easy at first because, you know, high school was a transition. High school was more about, okay, this is the play we're running, let's do it. This is what we're doing, we're moving, it was physical. So now it was more so, here's the play we're running, oh, hold up, he was in the wrong spot. You need to screen this way. So it helped me see the game in a slower motion, which makes it easier. As a player, you know, like you see the game as a point guard, you've seen it. Yeah, this was about to happen. You know, so you started seeing, I was able to see things before anybody else, and it slowed everything down. Now, I was fortunate. I failed to mention enough to start as a freshman going into college throughout my whole career. So coming in, that just meant a lot. And Coach Chaney told me that as a recruitment team, he's like, yo, if he comes here, you're starting. Because he's seen that, you know, so me being able, when I was there, I was a listener. The funny part of it is, my mom was a talker. So when I went to practice with Coach Chaney, it's no different from when my mom was sitting down and trying to give me knowledge herself. You know what I mean? But now it's something more interesting, it's basketball. So I was able to absorb everything so fast. Even to this day, when we had little temple groups and guys, Lynard was Coach Shane, never hollered at him, never got on him. He was good at two shoes, you know. I just was used to being talked to and having to listen and sit down and absorb stuff.
But tell me this.
Once I was able to do that, it was good.
So tell me this. How important is that? I don't want to jump over that before we go any further. How important is that? Because, you know, a lot of people say to me now, and I'm sure you can attest to it, when we used to play, I never really talked a lot. I was similar to you. Like, I'm not going to talk a lot unless it's, you know, trying to chase a shorty or something later on at the club. But the reality is, how important is that? A lot of players like to be heard, but they don't like to listen. And it's a difficult concept. But talk to me about that. And maybe even expand a little bit. How important is it to be a good listener? I always tell my kids and my players, it's a reason why you got 2 ears and 1 mouth. You should use this a lot less and use these a lot more. But talk us through that. Like, how does that help you? I mean, you said it initially, but how does that really help you?
That is an important thing that you just said. You got 2 ears, so even if you lose one, you still can listen. If you lose your mouth, you just can't. You got to use your hands to communicate. But listening is just as important as expression itself, or even more important, because communication in our lives is the most important thing in the world that we live in. And if you think about it in depth, even like, you know, I always think about it. I always use an example as a coach myself. The first thing when we're at war or someone's at war, you know, the first thing they try to do to the opposing party, eliminate communication. They cut lines of communication. So that means that I can't tell you where to be, I can't tell you where to go. And that's how important it is into our society. Everything, the cell phones that we have, we always communicate and trying to express ourselves. So you gotta be able to listen and comprehend. You know, like you said, listen. I can hear what you're saying too. There's a difference about comprehending and listening and hearing what you're saying. I hear what you're saying all day long because I got ears. I'm listening. Hearing you. But listening, meaning I'm analyzing, thinking about it, processing, and then either I have to have a reaction to what you're saying or something that I may do to what you're saying. So when it comes to in life and basketball, being able to sit down and listen to someone and understand what they're saying is one of the most important things in life. In my kids' life, when we teach our kids, are you listening? When I tell you to do that, are you comprehending what I'm doing on the basketball court? Yo, hey, are you guys listening? Can we communicate? And then sometimes we gotta find, like we talk about, ways to communicate with the team. We use numbers and we say, hey, everybody, as a mentor and as a coach yourself, we gotta identify ways we can get all 10 to 12 people who listen, because like we said, we can listen. Kids these days, they can't listen the same way. So what I've noticed, or to go further with, is that I address my kids 2 minutes. 2 minutes. Even if I stop every 5, but give me 2 minutes, because they can listen for 2 minutes. Now, once you go past 3, 4, you might as well just be, you know what I mean? So I've identified that. And one thing that I've also touched, because I researched this, is that the difference with us and how we learn things and how these kids learn today is different. The way we learn things helped us become better listeners. You know, you give me a dictionary, a word, I got to go to the dictionary, find that word, figure out if that word is verb, noun, adjective, then write about that word possibly in a sentence or whatever I'm going to do. But that's working my mind, teaching me how to absorb and adapt and understand. Nowadays, you tell a kid, hey, what does this mean? Oh, on my phone, oh, okay, boom. So those processes that we had to help us, our mind become stronger, they don't have. So we got to adjust in a way so they can become better listeners. But that's
dope, man. I love that. So now let's transition. So now you've done the college thing. You go to college. Now talk to me about the next level, because it's one thing to have a good college career, and you started all 4 years. You have a great college career. Now how do you transition into the pros? What's the transition look like? Because obviously it's different. Your brother was in the NBA. It's a different thing. You got the draft camp. But how did you go about it now in your professional career?
Professionally, well, you know, it was unique because the year I came out, now I wouldn't have been a draft pick or whatever else. I know my limitations. I know what I could have brought to the table. I know if I wasn't able to go to an NBA camp or NBA tryout, what I probably would have needed to focus on, just playing defense, being athletic, being quick, reading the game, understanding the game. I didn't get that. I'm not saying that year I came out of college was the first lockout, half a year lockout. So nothing was happening when I first came out. You know what I mean? When I first came out, it wasn't no like, all right, wait to go to a camp or so. I'm not saying I made a mistake. I mean, everybody has a dream of being in the NBA and think the NBA is what success is. I know better now. So my first opportunity came in early September, where a former Temple teammate of mine was in China, played in Beijing. He's like, yo, we need a player. Come on with me. And I went. The transition, the basketball is basketball. You know, like it is mental. Like I come from I have a strong mental foundation, so that's easy. You can't break me. You're not gonna break me.
So let me ask you, what is the biggest transition that you see?
From going from
yeah. And matter of fact, let's take it level to level. Let's go from high school. What's the biggest transition? And then now, as you go to China, what now is the biggest transition that you see?
I think from high school to college was the physicality of, and the being able to absorb more. You know, like I said, listening is important. But now you got, instead of 2 plays, 3 plays, you got 8, 9, 10 plays and 5 to 8 out of bounds plays and sidelines and defense. And you got to be able to coach call timeout. You got to be, I want you here, I want you to do this. There, you got to be able to listen, absorb, and go do what you need to do. When it came to from college to pro, it was more so about, it turned into, you know what? Yes, we may be doing all things, but at the end of the day, you're the American. You got to be better. You're supposed to do this.
You better get a bucket.
You know what I mean? Like, we may be doing all those things, but at the end of the day, it came down to, you get the ball, you do something, you make us better, you make us win, you do that. And I learned that. Well, I didn't learn that in China, because China had different rules. Only one player could play. I was sitting there, and I just was observing the culture and seeing how different cultures exist.
Right.
When I transitioned from China, I went to Spain. Because I stayed in China, I wound up leaving. This ain't working for me. Like, I'm not playing. I'm trying to make a career out of this. I'm not got numbers. So I went to Spain from January of that same year. And that's what I felt. When I went to Spain, it was like, okay, the coaches wanted to show that they can coach and had a certain level of expertise in basketball. But at the end of the day, when that game started getting close, and it was like, okay, what you want to do? What should we do? You know what I mean? Because you're supposed to know better. This is where you come from. This is, how things are. And I felt that. I learned that early on.
Let me ask you this. What does it feel like in that moment? I mean, because I've been there. You go to these countries and everybody want to be the best coach. You got the best X's and O's, but you got this strategy that he wants you to run the whole game. But now you're in the moment. Like, walk me through that as a player, and this is your first year really getting into it. How do you handle that? Because this is a business. Because so many guys go and play 1 year, and then their career is over.
They can't understand. Yeah, well, I was fortunate. The kind of player that I was helped me be adapt better on the court over there in Europe, because I was always a team player. And I can get mine. So I was unique. I was a player where, guess what? I can make everybody around me better, but guess what? If I need to go get a bucket, I can still get 20, 25 points when it was needed to be. So when that moment came, it was like I was able to make the right plays. And I learned that from Temple. Like, being able to make the right play. There's one thing Coach James said. The right player was at the ball at the right time to be able to make the right plays. And that's what I was. And that's why I was able to play there. So when I seen that happened and they put that weight on my shoulder, I was able to do that when it was a time to get a bucket, or it was a time I could score 5 points or 10 points or something, 10 straight, I can do that. And I could also still give my teammates the ball and find them in ways where they would be successful. Because that's another thing that happens that you know about, is that in the midst of the coach telling, because you're getting paid most likely more, him telling you to go do you, players just go do them and forget about it else, and that team starts to turn against you. Right? So I was able to still get my teammates involved and get them doing the best things that they can do, still do me, and still be able to help us win games. But
let's be real about it. How difficult is that? Because as a foreigner, they immediately look at you. As you step off the plane, I need 17, 18, 19 a night. I don't care if you get double team, triple team. I need that. I need that
And
every night.
And when you don't get it, they want to talk to you about it.
And here's the thing. And when you don't get it, you're the first person at the chopping block, even though it's not you.
Yeah.
How does that happen? Towards the end of the year, do you feel more strained? Because that's a lot emotionally. How are you feeling as you walk through this? Are you getting used to it, or is it tiring? Because, I mean, you're halfway around the world, too.
You're halfway around. Yeah, now, that's a good... in that moment, and I'm going to talk about that 1 year because I learned something in that 1 year. My wife came to Spain, and the first two... She came, I think it was the second game she was there. She was sitting with the owners, or the coach's wife, or the owner's wife. And I don't think I was having the game up until halftime that, you know, they was normally used to seeing or whatever. The team, I mean, you know, teams are not stupid. They focusing on me, whatever else. So my wife told me, she said, you know, at halftime that the owner's wife was like, well, since you here, Lynard is not looking right. Like, you may need to go home. And, you know, they don't know how to hold say it in a way that we might say it to somebody. So
they're going to say it straight up.
Right. So you know that. So, we wanted to win the game and know better. But as you say that, as the year went on, I knew it was coming. So like I said, I was able to adjust. That's why I think I was able to stay in Europe or play internationally so long, because I knew now I started picking out the moments where I got to do this and do that because it's all on my shoulders. No matter what goes on, I realize it's on me. If we win, it's on me. If we lose, it's on me. You know what I mean? And I'll be the first one to say, well, you get paid this much, or they don't want to pay you this much. So I learned that early on when the moments is mine and when the moments is not mine. And because I was a team player, coaches and stuff understood that, you know what, it's not really him, it's these other guys not working hard. Sometimes, you know what I mean? I was able to use that, you know, to my advantage because, you know, that coaches are quick to say, well, it's American, we getting a new guy, he's flying in, but I'm doing my job and I'm still getting my players involved. So coaches, I had to go say, well, you know what, hey, you ain't in the gym long enough making the shots because he's getting double teams, passing you the ball, you know. So I was able to use those things, but it's a lot of pressure. But
so talk me through it.
From pressure.
Yeah, but so you've come from pressure, but you know, I always tell a lot of my players, elevation requires separation, and as you go higher, there's a level of separation that you have to do from fear or issues or family issues, whatever the case may be. So now you're evolving, you're elevating, and you're crafting out a career. Do you start looking at jobs differently now? Do you start looking, you know, a lot of guys, I know I made the mistake at first. It was like, how much money? But as I started getting older, I was looking at it like I tell my players all the time, I made more money playing defense than I did playing offense. Mm-hmm. When I was defensive player of the year, I was making easy 6 figures, no question about it. Like, there was no conversation. Like, you're the best defender, you know your job. Are you starting now, as you evolve as a player, to look at jobs differently, picking jobs differently? Or were you just like, yo, whatever comes my way, if I feel it and I like the money, like how are you evolving in that process as a professional? Because now you're a businessman.
Right. You know what? You always think, you know, money is always sometimes somewhat of a determining factor early on. I think early on is money. Like you almost go play anywhere. Somebody say, hey, this, that, you know what I mean? Like, they don't give you this. You going to Cambodia or you going to Vietnam or, you know what I mean? Not saying that those are bad places, but I think money in the beginnings, and then I started realizing I had to come up with a plan. Like you said, I'm a business now. And what kind of plan can I, you know, set for myself to be successful in what I'm trying to do? I mean, I was fortunate enough, I didn't have no kids until later on in life. I didn't have as many responsibilities at home. So I didn't really have that much pressure to chase certain jobs. Because with those high-paying jobs, there's a lot more risk. We had one game in those type of jobs. You can almost be on your flight game Friday night. You can have a flight on Monday and don't even know about it. They come and say, you leaving. They got a plane for the ticket and everything. So I started understanding that, okay, me and my agent me and him came up with a plan. And obviously, Europe is much different. And national basketball is much different now. Believe me, it's way more different. So our plan was to get me a international passport, which I would become a Bosnian, which at that point in time was very lucrative to be an American player with a passport from another country, which makes you can play on the team as a, you know, a different type of foreigner. And that was our plan. And the fastest way to get a passport was either to get married, you know, or whatever else, have kids, or in England, as you know, 4 or 5 years, you stay there and you play, and you get your passport. And that was our plan, because at the 2 or 3 years of playing, you know, in Israel, Czech Republic, South America, whatever else, and I wound up being in England. Oh, this is a familiar place. I'm finding myself to be successful. The money ain't the greatest, but with this plan, this is a great plan to have. And that's what we did. And that's why I kind of stayed in England when we met each other and built our friendship and played and stayed there with that plan of getting a passport, coming to Bosnia, then going to Spain or something like that, then going to, Belgium or whatever else. Now, you may not know, this will be the first time you heard it. My 5th year, that 4th year, you got to get an indefinite leave to remain, which everybody don't know which is the first step into getting your passport. Indefinite leave to remain means that I can go to England any time in my life and work. Now, I have that in my passport. It took me 4 years to get it, 4 years of work permits, 4 years of being there. 4 consecutive years I had to prove I had to take the paperwork and then give you the stamp in your passport. Once you get that and you stay 1 more year working, now you're eligible to go get your passport, right? So what happened with me was that 5th year that I was supposed to come back and play, Chris Finch called me, my first coach that I played with in England, who was very successful at the time and still to this day coaching the NBA. He was in Belgium and he said, Lynard, I want you to come over here. He had a lot of money for me. And he said, I know you, you know me, you want to believe me. And I'm like, look, I can't. And he was like, look, don't stay over there. If you come here, you'll be set the rest of your career. And it was a great, decision. And at that time, my wife was pregnant. And we just had my daughter.
Right.
Because we was in London. I had my daughter April 13th, my daughter was born. And it was that time period, you see your first child. I'm like, I started contemplating, I don't even want to go play anymore. I want to be with my baby. I want to raise my daughter. And Finch called me. So it was either go back to England 1 more year, get my passport, or Finch told me, look, I got this money for you. And he also told me, look, you can bring your own family. You can have your own house, bring your wife, bring your daughter. And that's what's still different. Like, it was about that experience, my daughter, my wife, the money, it was an easy choice then.
So let me ask you a question, though. You get the money. The money is always a good thing, especially when you're having a family. You know what I mean? I had a daughter from when I was out of college. So for me, at early, it was chasing that bag. Like, I'll go wherever. But now talk to me about it. It's a different pressure now because it's not just a game. Now you have your wife there. And there's certain tendencies and things that she has to have and things she needs. Mm-hmm. Was that a stress for you? Or how were you able to handle that?
Wife and daughter. My wife lived with me twice, a couple times. We lived in Spain together when I first came out, which that was just fun. We was young, 21-year-olds, 22-year-olds. That was just that situation in Belgium was different because my wife has given up her job in America to come live with me because I always had that security, that foundation. My wife was working at home, something happened to me, I got insurance, I got income coming in, I can bounce back. But now she done gave up all that. She's come to live with me, and I have a newborn child. And so, it was just so much pressure because you got to think if I get hurt, or I knew I was secure enough that Finch was my guy. Where if something was to happen, I'm taking care of that. For that, I'm taking care of it, hands down. I know what to worry about. But if I get hurt, that's something different. Or we're not busy, that's something different. And so that was a lot of pressure. And the funny part, you say that, I struggled in Belgium a little bit because of that pressure. We still made it to the championship because we was well coached and we had, late night and a couple of great guys on the team. I wasn't as successful there that first year because of those pressures and it's different now. Coming home, my wife is there, my child is there. I'm like, I'm carrying all that weight. I'm going to be successful. I'm going to be good with the team. And the funny part is, this is the first time ever in my life, not ever in my life, but since the 12th grade that I didn't start, I went to Finch and said, you know what? I want to come off the bench. As a professional and this is the first time since the 12th grade that I didn't start a basketball game. Since then, I started every game. That's college, you know what I mean? So I went to Finch to relieve that pressure. That's what I thought was best.
Let me ask you this. How humbling is that? And then on the other side of that, how mature do you have to be as a player to say, you know what? Maybe this is a different angle to go from that benefits the team.
Mm-hmm.
It's not just you. Now it's the whole unit. And then how did it work out for you?
Yeah, it worked. I mean, Finch came to me, and I went to the coach, and I told him that because I thought about it. I said, you know what? Starting these games, I got this pressure on, and I'm not as successful, and I feel, it was a different game than it was in England anyway. The guys were just as athletic and stronger. These are big time European teams that were big. We in Belgium. Belgium got some of the, some great teams there. And so I had to do that. We sat down and talked about it. He thought it was okay. Well, this is what's best for you, and I said this is what's best for the team. Now you got a starter who started half the year now coming off and coming into the game, giving you, and it worked out. But ironically, I did get hurt. I got hurt. I was it was a pre-practice, pre-warm-up game, doing layup drills, 3-on-2, 2-on-1. And I thought I was, for some reason, another teammate of mine was just going 100%. Everybody's going 30 and 40. And I stepped directly on his foot with all my weight. And I was out for about a month and a half. That was the worst ankle sprain I had. I thought my ankle broke, but it wasn't. And so that set me back, and then I came back later on. Like I said, we still were successful. We wound up going to the championship game and all that other stuff. That year was a real one of my toughest years ever in basketball in my career.
So talk me through it. Now you've been a pro, you've had the professional career. You're looking at the clock and it's ticking, and Father Time's always undefeated. And now you're saying, okay, I'm going to quit basketball. How do you get into coaching? Like, what transition? I've always said that you was like a super genius at it. You used to always be like, you never would say much, but when you did, you'd be like, dude, it's just simple. Just do this, do that. Like, it's not that hard.
Not that hard.
So now, how does he get into coaching? Like,
let me end up my career because, like you said, I started thinking about that, and I wound up going back to England, going to play for the Newcastle Eagles. 3 years there, wound up getting Hall of Fame, and on a bus ride home from Plymouth. Plymouth, it's about a 6.5, 7 hour bus ride. One of the worst road trip basketball game. We wound up going down there on the bus, getting off, playing a game, getting back on and come back. So we almost on the bus 12, how many hours. And I rode that bus and said, this is it. Like, this
game
is it.
over.
Like,
I'm done.
I said that. I said, my wife is home now. My wife is back home now. My daughter's 3, and I got to go home. It wasn't because of injuries. It wasn't because I was tired. It was because I didn't have the skill. That mental thing we talked about. And I realized, I said, this is it. I can't ride buses and get off games. And so I retired. And so coaching wasn't in my playbook when retiring. When I was going to come home, I had my degree. That's one thing you got to focus on. I made sure I had my degree. Because a European professional is not an NBA professional. You gotta set yourself up with some type of foundation for when you come home, because you want to come home and be like, man, what am I doing now? And the first thing you're gonna think about, I want to be a trainer, I want to coach basketball, but you realize that ain't gonna pay no bills.
Nope.
So you gotta set yourself up. But anyway, I had my degree. I come home, and I wanted to have a son, or another child. I didn't say I wanted to have a son, but yes, another child. Wife gets pregnant, and so I'm home. This guy, Mike L., one of my best friends now, calls me up. He's a head coach at a charter school for high school. Lynard, I hear you home. I don't even know how he got my number. I need you to use my assistant. Told him no. No. Told him no. This ain't gonna work. I'm not doing it. My wife's pregnant. I wasn't there for the first child as much. He called me every day and told me, whatever schedule you need for your life, you can have. I just need you around. And I wound up saying yes. I can work around my own schedule. So I sat there on the bench. Like we said, we know the game. We played the game. It was easy. I mean, it's easy for us to say, oh, this is what we need to do. This is what we need to do in practice for us to be better. And I started loving that. And then the next year, I had a Temple alumni guy call me. He said, no, you ready to be a head coach? And I'm like, no, because I still was thinking, family, I'm done with basketball. That was a Friday night. We was hanging out. Monday, he says, yo, I need your resume. Sent him my resume, one of the most prestigious schools in Philadelphia, William Penn Charter. It's the first school ever in America. It's a private school, 30,000 people. It's a private school. Nobody, first of all, African-American coaches don't get this job because it is easy. Let's be 100% real. Long story short, the AD's a Temple guy, I get the job. The whole city is like, how did Lynard? Well, it wasn't too much shock because my resume and who I am spoke for myself, spoke for me. But they still were saying, like, how does he get that job? Like, just never being a high school coach head coach, whatever. So anyway, I get that job, and that job helped me become the coach I am now, because those kids are not your inner city kid that play basketball outside the courts every day. Those kids are not those kids. Those kids got to be, and I'm saying they don't have the same talent and drive and will be successful, but you got to go A, B, C, D, E, F, G with those kids. You know, you get some kids from the inner city, you can start at C. I know you're going to make a left-hand layup. I know you're going to make a right layup. We're going to start at C. So
right.
That job taught me how to be a micromanager type coach. This the drills we doing. I'm watching you doing it. Do it again. Do it again. Do it again till you got it right. You know what I mean?
Right.
But now that, you know, and that's what helped me become that type of coach where these drills, I need these drills for us to be successful with this. So after that being there, one of the most special things that happened in my life was to be able to go back and coach the high school that made me who I was, my alma mater, Nebraska. I always was a supporter. I always supported the programs and the team. And the AD was a football coach, and I would order the football games. Calls me one day, look, this is what's going on. Would you like to come up after your school? I just called my old high school coach, get his approval. Once he said yes, I went back there, and that was, you know, that feeling there was like a full circle of life for me with basketball. You know, and
that's unique, man. It's amazing to see that there's so much growth. And for anybody who's watching or who'll see it later, you know, this is one of those stories where, you know, it's not just working hard. It's working smart. And you've worked hard and you've worked smart on each level. And now it comes full circle and life gives you the opportunity to go back. Just give us a brief summary, Boogie, if you can. What kind of coach are you now? How have you matured through all that you've been through now? Now you're at Simon grad. You guys have a heck of a squad. You're established as a coach. What kind of coach are you now? Like what kind of culture have you created there that you want to keep continued? Even if you know, we're hoping that you stay there for the rest of your career, because that would be amazing. But if you had to leave, what kind of coach do you say and culture you're creating now?
That is a great question, because obviously in the beginning I didn't know what I was. You know what I mean? And it just came out. And so I've learned throughout the years, though. Like I said, in the beginning I was a micromanager, how to do this, and I'm not a coach who looks for perfection.